One of the most common frustrations students have expressed with their writing is that their ideas just don't seem to flow. Flow, as students often refer to it, is really about cohesion in writing, connecting ideas. And what helps writers achieve cohesion are transitions. But what exactly do transitions do? How do they help us achieve cohesion or flow in our writing? Transitions define or clarify relationships among ideas. They help us show how a paragraph relates to the previous one, and they do the same thing at the sentence level as well, showing how the ideas in a sentence progressed out of the preceding sentence. By showing how our ideas relate to each other, transitions make our logic clear to our audiences. They externalize the writer's thoughts about how ideas go together. I like to think about transitions as road signs for my reader. They help the reader know what direction I'm heading next with my ideas. The first transition strategy that comes to most people's minds when they think of transitions is the use of transition words like first, second, third, additionally, or however. In fact, this is the only transition strategy many inexperienced writers know. But there are actually a lot of different strategies writers rely on to help them show the connections among ideas. Writers also use repetition of keywords or phrases as a way to connect ideas. They also use pronouns and synonyms to help them repeat ideas without becoming monotonous. Parallel structures use the grammatical structure of words, phrases, and sentences to show how ideas relate to each other. And placing ideas in a particular order, or grouping like ideas together, is another tactic writers employ. Writers also use longer transitional phrases or a whole transitional sentence to explain the connections between ideas. And in longer written works, writers may even use an entire paragraph solely as a transitional device. Let's look at each of these strategies in detail so you can see how they work. There is a wide variety of transition words you can choose from depending on what kind of relationship you want to establish between ideas. Transition words exist for almost every purpose you can imagine: to compare or contrast ideas, to show cause and effect relationships, to add or illustrate a point, etc. For a comprehensive list of transition words, check out the resources on Purdue OWL's website, linked in the additional resources in the description below this video. This paragraph is the concluding paragraph of a student essay titled "You Are What You Drink," in which a student has analyzed a Pepsi advertisement from the 1950s. The transition words are highlighted in colored bold font. Listen as I read the paragraph to see how these words function to move ideas forward and show how sentences relate to each other. Clearly, several aspects of this campaign were successful. The appeal to the diet-conscious homemaker who bought the groceries seemed to work well for Pepsi, as did the subtle appeal to the woman who wanted to look as beautiful to her man as this Marilyn Monroe image did. In spite of her knowledge that what she chose to drink would not change her image or beauty, she continued to purchase Pepsi. Therefore, the ad campaign was a success. Pepsi remained the light refreshment that became part of the healthier lifestyle of the 1950s woman. The opening transition word "clearly" links back to the ideas this student presented in the body paragraphs that came before this. "In spite of" helps show a contrasting idea, and therefore shows the cause and effect relationship between the ad campaign and consumer behavior. Repetition is probably the most basic transition strategy. Most of us use it without even thinking. Whether you know it or not, you likely use this strategy every day in conversation. Repetition of keywords and phrases ensures that our audience maintains focus on our key ideas. This strategy is often used like a refrain between sections of a speech or essay to link each new supporting idea to the thesis or the central point of the text. One of the most famous uses of this technique is Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech, in which he repeats the phrase "I have a dream" at key moments throughout his speech to introduce each new aspect of that dream. If you're not familiar with this speech, check out the link included in the description below this video. Repetition can also be used to link sentences within a paragraph. You can see this use of this strategy in a paragraph from the student essay, The Art of Juggling. This student used repetition as a way to create forward momentum in his paragraph by linking each new idea to the one before it. You can see the repeated words highlighted in bold colored font, but listen for them and the effects they create as I read the paragraph. The heaviest and most burdensome ball is work. I work 30 or 35 hours a week, usually 3 p.m. until 9 or 10 p.m., 5 nights a week. Last week, when my boss was in the hospital, I worked even later, staying until almost 11 o'clock to cook for a table of 9 that came in late. With busy season coming up, there are nights in November and December when we are already booked up. Nights are not going to get any easier anytime soon. Because each word is repeated only once, and the repetition occurs in close proximity to its antecedent, the strategy works well and doesn't feel overly monotonous. Repeating the same word or phrase too many times in rapid succession or throughout an entire paragraph or essay can become incredibly tedious to read and really start to irritate your audience. Too much repetition can feel like fingernails on a chalkboard in your reader's mind. You can use the repetition strategy, yet avoid this undesirable effect by using pronouns and synonyms to relate the same idea in a different way. In the introduction to Mixed Martial Arts Are Brutal, Not, one student illustrates how effective pronouns and synonyms can be when you need to repeat a word or idea multiple times. All of the words in red refer to the fighters, while all of the words in blue refer to the fans. The crowd is roaring, and the gladiators in the cage are giving it everything they have got. One fighter connects with a right and staggers the other. The reeling fighter counters with a thunderous head kick. The arena is electrified, and the fans are on their feet. Both fighters put their hearts and souls into the last 30 seconds of the fight, trying to secure the victory. This paragraph sounds fine the way it is written, but what if this student hadn't used pronouns and synonyms to connect his ideas? Can you imagine reading this version of the paragraph? The fans are roaring, and the fighters in the cage are giving it everything the fighters have got. One fighter connects with the right and staggers the other fighter. The reeling fighter counters with a thunderous head kick. The arena is electrified, and the fans are on the fans' feet. Both fighters put the fighters' hearts and souls into the last 30 seconds of the fight, trying to secure the victory. You heard it, didn't you? The nails on the chalkboard. Without pronouns and synonyms, repetition can get out of control and sound absolutely terrible. As effective communicators, we won't do that to our readers. Parallel structure is a more advanced and complex transition strategy, but is highly effective because parallel structure indicates parallel meaning. What does that mean, though? What is a parallel structure? Parallel structure means that you phrase or organize ideas the same way. If you have a list of activities, for example, each word in the list should be the same form of each word. For example, each word in the list should be a present tense verb, or perhaps each word in the list is a noun. I enjoy running, hiking, and weightlifting. A list of activities where each activity is structured differently, as in, I enjoy running, hikes, and to weightlift, sounds like chaos instead of a list of items that go together. Repeating the use of rhetorical structures in this way can help to show how ideas are similar. This strategy can be employed by using similar sentence structures for sentences that all have the same purpose, and it can also be used in the way you organize ideas. If, for example, you stated at the beginning of a paragraph that you were going to illustrate that hiking is good exercise and provides the same therapeutic benefits as meditation, then you would be employing parallel structure if you addressed your points in the same order as you developed the paragraph. That is, you would address hiking as good exercise first, and then explore the similarities to meditation therapy. Using parallel structures for topic sentences is another good way to employ this strategy to build coherence in your essay. Inexperienced writers sometimes repeat rhetorical structures without a clear purpose because they have not yet expanded their repertoire of rhetorical tools. They may use the same sentence structures not because they want to show similarities between ideas, but because they don't know very many sentence patterns and therefore rely on the same ones over and over. This is one reason why it is important to be aware of the forms of repetition you are using and what that repetition means to experienced readers. Let's look at some examples of parallel structures in action. This paragraph begins with a compound sentence where each independent clause is structured in a similar way. Homelessness has been around for decades, but it has not always carried the name homeless. The first clause begins with the subject of the sentence, homelessness, followed by a verb, has been, and finishes with a short phrase that provides some information about the subject. The second clause mimics this structure, beginning with the subject, it, referring to the same subject of the previous clause, followed by the verb, has carried, and some additional information about the subject. In the next sentence, the writer has used parallel structure to list 3 examples of ways people referred to homelessness in the past. Those who are homeless were, in the past, referred to as tramps, hobos, and rail riders. Tramps, hobos, and rail riders are all plural nouns. Using the same part of speech for each word in the list helps show that these words are part of a group of like ideas. A little further in the paragraph, the writer has again used similar sentence structures to provide 2 examples of how entertainment media have glorified homelessness. Charlie Chaplin, known as the Little Tramp, stole America's heart. Roger Miller made a fortune with his song, King of the Road. Each sentence is a short, simple sentence that names a famous person in entertainment as the subject to begin the statement. Even though there are no transitional words or phrases such as another example, we know that Roger Miller is a second example illustrating the same idea because the writer has used parallel structure for the 2 sentences to indicate that they serve the same purpose in the paragraph. The final example of parallel structure in this student's paragraph is another list. Many of those who are homeless are veterans, mentally ill people, and substance abusers. Once again, she has used these plural nouns in succession to show that these words are all part of the same group. Ordering and grouping has to do with the way you organize your ideas into sentences and paragraphs in your essay. Choosing a specific method of organization or even just grouping similar ideas together can drastically improve your essay's coherence or flow because your reader will be able to more easily follow your logic. There are many different patterns of organization. Order of specificity organizes information and ideas from general to specific, or conversely from specific to general. This organization pattern is commonly used in introductory paragraphs to describe a wider context for the issue or topic discussed in the rest of the essay. Order of import, also sometimes referred to as emphatic order, presents information or ideas in order of emphasis, beginning either with the least important point and moving toward the most important one, or beginning with the most important idea and moving toward the least important. Chronological order organizes information chronologically, placing them in time order from beginning to end in the order that they happened. Similarly, sequential order presents information or ideas as a step-by-step process. First, second, third, etc. Classification sorts information or ideas into categories that are easily recognizable and understood by the audience, while division does the opposite, breaking down a single complex idea into smaller categories or parts that are easier for the audience to understand and follow. Comparison typically alternates between 2 or more objects or ideas, highlighting the similarities among them. Contrast, on the other hand, moves back and forth between 2 or more objects or ideas, highlighting the differences between them. Logical sequence places ideas in a logical progression where each new idea proceeds plausibly out of the preceding idea. And finally, spatial order organizes ideas as they occur in space, either near the nearest to farthest or farthest to nearest. This strategy is commonly used in describing a physical object or a place. The description would begin in a logical spot and move in a fluid, reasonable path around the object or space. For example, if a writer were describing a room, she might begin as she entered the doorway and then move through her description in the same order that she would encounter the room's parts as she walked through the space. In this paragraph about television making viewers passive, the writer discusses how watching TV affects both children and adults in similar ways. The writer moves back and forth between his discussion of children and adults. Television makes viewers passive. Children who have an electronic babysitter spend most of their waking hours in a semi-conscious state. Older viewers watch tennis matches and basketball games with none of the excitement of being in the stands. Even if children are watching Sesame Street or Barney and Friends, they are being educated passively. The child actors are going on nature walks, building crafts projects, playing with animals, and participating in games, but the little viewers are simply watching. Older viewers watch guests discuss issues with Oprah Winfrey, but no one will turn to the home viewers to ask their opinion. If the writer were comparing or contrasting children and adult viewers, this organization would make sense. But he isn't doing that. He is just showing how TV affects children and then showing how it also affects adults the same way. In this case, grouping all of the information about children together and then presenting all of the information about adult viewers would make more sense. If the writer revised, it might look like this. You can tell just from the color coding of the information that this paragraph is better organized. Since I rearranged information, however, I had to substitute some repeated words for pronouns and add in a transitional word. Listen to the revised paragraph for how it flows better than the previous version. Television makes viewers passive. Children who have an electronic babysitter spend most of their waking hours in a semi-conscious state. Even if they are watching Sesame Street or Barney and Friends, they are being educated passively. The child actors are going on nature walks, building crafts projects, playing with animals, and participating in games. But the little viewers are simply watching. Similarly, older viewers watch tennis matches and basketball games with none of the excitement of being in the stands. They watch guests discuss issues with Oprah Winfrey, but no one will turn to the home viewers to ask their opinion. Transitional phrases and sentences combine with other transitional strategies to craft stronger, more sophisticated relationships among ideas. This strategy is most commonly used at the beginning or end of paragraphs to show how paragraphs relate to each other. Let's take a look at this strategy in action. Here we have the last sentence of the last body paragraph of the essay, Cinderella? No, followed by the beginning of the concluding paragraph. Notice how the transitional sentence that starts the conclusion also uses a transition word, one, and repeats key ideas from the end of the previous paragraph, antiquated and stereotypes. Women have many opportunities open to them, yet we often hold ourselves back because of antiquated and outdated stereotypes. One of the most powerful ways these antiquated stereotypes get across is through the media. The 1950s sitcom Leave It to Beaver is a classic show centering around a young man that mischief always finds. His mother, though, is a classic example of stereotyping. June Cleaver spent her days cooking, cleaning, and watching the kids, obviously. One of the reasons that transitional phrases and sentences are more sophisticated is because they combine other strategies to more clearly and directly link the ideas, as in this example. While less often used than other strategies, writers sometimes rely on entire transitional paragraphs to move from one idea to another. In longer, more complex texts, transitional phrases or sentences are sometimes not enough to explain the intricate relationships between ideas. In such cases, writers craft a transitional paragraph that explains to the reader how the ideas in the preceding paragraph relate to those in the subsequent one. In his essay, Entitlement Education, Daniel Bruno explores several ways students are cheated by our educational system. After addressing all the ways students get cheated, except for the last one, he includes a transitional paragraph. True enough, these are all ways that students who are allowed to just slide by end up getting cheated. But another way, and one less talked about, strikes me as being far more offensive. This reason hinges on the fact that many students are not just sliding by. This paragraph helps him move from all those other reasons to the most important one he addresses, and his transitional paragraph places more emphasis on the worst way students are cheated. He then goes on into his final body paragraph to explain how many students are given passing grades even when they are producing failing work, leaving them at a disadvantage in their academic, professional, and personal lives. Notice that in this transitional paragraph, he clearly links to all the previous ideas that have come before when he says, these are all ways. Notice also that he doesn't actually name the next reason. This paragraph's purpose is not to identify specific reasons, but simply to act as a transition between the reasons that came before and the one that will follow. Finally, I also want to point out that he is using emphatic order to organize his body paragraphs by saving the worst for last. So you can see a combination of a lot of different transition strategies used within the transitional paragraph. You might not find many occasions that call for transitional paragraphs, but it is important to know that transitions work on many levels, from a single word to an entire paragraph, to the way we organize and structure our ideas. Transitions are what make ideas flow. They create coherence in our writing by serving as the glue that holds everything together. They function as road signs that map our ideas and explain where we have been and where we are going. The next time you don't feel like your writing flows, remember that you can get in the flow by utilizing a variety of transition strategies in your writing, so your readers can flow down the river of your ideas with ease, instead of wading through choppy whitewater rapids that jolt them back and forth unexpectedly.